Paul Mason. I'm the culture editor on Channel 4 News in Britain, and I'm the author of Why It's Kicking Off Everywhere, a book about the global uprisings. What happened, I think from 2009-10 onwards, was a really interesting change for me, in the character of protests, in their intensity, and in their significance. And so, I mean, the ones that I reported on were the British student protests, and then straight into the wave of unrest that swept through southern Europe once the austerity measures were imposed. So Greece, Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Italy, and then Occupy in Britain, America, and all points northwest, south, and east of that. Russia, you know, the stolen election there, erupted into an unprecedented protest. And just then, the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring races across North Africa into the Middle East, and it carries on. Just as people are writing off the idea that we're in a generalized wave of unrest, you get Turkey and Brazil, and these economies too were thrust into massive protest. I think the detonator is certainly the end of an economic model. All the promises of neoliberalism were cancelled. The new middle class, the kind of semi-slum dwelling middle class, it cannot advance. They see corruption, they see economic hardship for themselves, they struggle, they drank the Kool-Aid of neoliberalism, but it doesn't deliver. In America, the same thing. You know, they're looking at, they come out of college, as the famous communique from the Santa Cruz students said, we come out of college, you know, doing the same jobs that we did when we were in college to pay our way through. What is the point? But then you get into developing societies. You get in North Africa, you know, it looks like these societies, the economies are growing massively, but when you look at the lives of young people, they're incredibly hemmed in. The masses would have not come to the streets purely on issues of democracy. Those guys I spoke to in Cairo said, we tried that. It's when we went to them and said, the price of oil, the price of bread, fuck the dictatorship, that's when it worked. The neoliberal deal was, if you put it honestly, society's destroyed, but the economy's okay. So all the social bonds have fallen apart, but yet you get relentless growth, relentless expansion of credit, relentless access to credit for poor people. People's lives feel better because of neoliberalism. Once the deal is over, basically it has to be reformulated as society is screwed and the economy is screwed. Now, if those two things are true, and both those things matter to people, a third thing is also screwed, and that is politics. This is my readout of the economic crisis. We know what caused it. It's become commonplace to say what caused it. It was the credit boom of the mid-2000s and the financial complexity that was allowed and encouraged. So the crash is the price you pay for that. You know, the response was really, the classic neoliberal response was to print money, that is to keep the economy afloat using monetary policy while attacking the debts of countries through fiscal austerity. So when we use the words austerity, at the moment what we mean is fiscal austerity. That is, cut back the state, cut back welfare programs. And that has, I think that has suppressed the global recovery. What's the result 5 years on is that the economy's on life support of $6 trillion printed money while they hack back the state. In the end, that might be a recipe for survival, but it's not really a recipe for a long-term mode of accumulation for capital. And then the next thing that comes is the real austerity, because to make this new system work, at the end of all realignments of capitalism, somebody always pops up and says, you know, effectively the workforce, whether it be Britain in the 20s, you know, the developed world in the 70s and 80s, the workforce has to take less of the pie, and other people, profit, has to take more of the pie. That's the argument. So what the austerity is, you have to become like Chinese worker. You know, the Argentine worker has to become like the Bangladeshi worker. The German worker has to become like the Greek worker in terms of their income and lifestyle. That is the 20, 30, 40-year project of some parts of capital, and if it happens, the issue is, where do you get growth from? I've always compared these revolts to 1848, and 1848 ended in a series of dictatorships, France, Germany, Italy, but those dictatorships would never have worked had they not delivered fairly immediately economic prosperity, the like of which we had never seen until then. So the 1850s and 60s are for capitalism a really amazing growth spurt forward. This 1848 style turmoil can't end, no matter how many dictatorships you impose, until some sustainable form of economic growth occurs, until a sustainable new model of capitalism emerges that everybody can kind of instinctively understand, and how the good life emerges from it for people who are educated and work 10 hours a day. There's no 1851. No amount of crackdown stops the unrest.